Welcome, everyone, to a special deep dive from the Olive Grove podcast.
Great to be diving in.
Today, we're really getting into a pivotal time in the early church. We're looking at the travels, the trials, and, the triumphs of Paul during his second missionary journey.
Specifically, Acts chapter 17. It's a fantastic passage.
It really is. It shows that initial push, the spread of the Christian message into Europe.
Exactly. And our source for this, of course, is Acts 17 itself. We're basically tracing Paul's steps from getting out of jail in Philippi all the way to, the intellectual hub of Athens.
Quite the journey.
And he's proclaiming his message the whole way, adapting as he goes.
And our aim, really, is for you listening to get a really solid grasp of these events, what happened, and why it still matters.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's pick it up. Paul and Silas, they've just been released from that jail in Philippi, as we saw last time in Acts 16.
Right. Not exactly a pleasant experience there.
No. So they move on, passing through Amphipolis and Apollonia.
And then they arrive in Thessalonica.
Now, Thessalonica, this wasn't just some small town, right?
No, definitely not. It was a significant city. We know it had a Jewish community large enough for a synagogue.
Which required, 10 adult Jewish men?
That's the traditional minimum, yes. So an established community. Geographically, it was also important near rivers flowing into the Aegean Sea. A real hub.
Makes sense. And Paul, what does he do first?
What he almost always does, heads to the synagogue. It was his standard practice.
And over the next 3 Sabbaths, he's there reasoning with them.
Yeah, using the Tanakh, their own scriptures, he's laying out his case.
And the core message is consistent.
Always.
Yeah.
That the Messiah, according to the scriptures, had to suffer, die, and rise again.
And crucially.
That this Messiah is Jesus. Yeshua.
Okay, so how does that go down?
Mixed reactions, as you might expect. Some Jews were persuaded, they believed.
And it wasn't just Jews, right?
No, interestingly, a large number of Greek God-fearers, Gentiles, who were attracted to Judaism, also came to believe.
And some prominent women, too, the text says.
Yes, quite a diverse group forming there.
But inevitably, there's pushback.
Uh-huh. The Jews who didn't believe, the text says they became jealous.
Jealousy seems to be a recurring theme in the opposition Paul faces.
It really does. And this jealousy, it spills over into action. They gather some, let's call them unsavory characters from the marketplace.
The riffraff, as the translation puts it.
Yeah, and they start a riot. They actually attack the house of a believer named Jason.
Hoping to find Paul and Silas there, presumably.
Exactly. They wanted to drag them out to the mob.
But Paul and Silas weren't there.
Apparently not. So Plan B, they drag Jason and some other believers before the city officials instead.
And the accusations are pretty serious.
Oh, extremely serious. Basically treason. They're accused of turning the whole world upside down.
Wow. That's quite a reputation already.
Isn't it? And specifically, defying Caesar's decrees by claiming there's another king.
King Yeshua.
Exactly. That's a direct challenge to Roman authority. You can see why the officials were thrown into turmoil.
High stakes. So what happens to Jason and the others?
Well, the authorities were clearly troubled, but in the end, they let Jason and the others go after they posted bond, some kind of security payment.
So a tense situation, but they get out. What about Paul and Silas?
The believers get them out of town quickly at night to avoid more trouble. They send them off to Berea.
Okay, next stop Berea. And the reception there is different.
Markedly different. The text famously describes the Bereans as being of nobler character than the Thessalonians.
Right. And what made them nobler? It wasn't just that they listened, was it?
No, it was how they listened. They eagerly welcomed the message, yes, but then, and this is key, they examined the Tanakh, the scriptures, every day.
Every day. To see if what Paul was saying lined up.
Exactly. It's this combination of eagerness and critical examination. They were testing the message against the scriptures they already held dear.
That's a fantastic model, really. Not just blind faith, but reasoned investigation.
Precisely. And the result?
Many believed.
Yes, many Jews, and also, again, prominent Greeks, both women and men, a really positive response.
But Paul just can't seem to shake the opposition, can he?
It seems to follow him. Those unbelieving Jews from Thessalonica, when they heard Paul was preaching in Berea,
They came after him.
They did. They traveled to Berea specifically to stir up the crowds and cause trouble for him there, too.
That's some persistent opposition.
It really shows the intensity of the conflict. So, because of this renewed agitation,
Paul has to move on again.
right, the believers send him off, this time towards the coast, but Silas and Timothy stay behind in Berea for a bit.
Okay, so they're splitting up temporarily.
Yes. likely to help solidify the new community there. Paul's escort takes him as far as Athens.
Athens, the cradle of democracy philosophy.
Exactly. But Paul gets there, waiting for Silas and Timothy to catch up, and his first reaction isn't awe at the architecture.
No, the text says he was greatly distressed. Why?
Because the city was, and I quote, full of idols. It deeply disturbed his spirit to see this pervasive idolatry.
You can imagine, coming from his background.
Yeah.
So what does he do? Does he just wait quietly?
Not Paul. While waiting, he starts doing what he does best, talking. He goes to the synagogue, reasons with the Jews and the God-fearers there.
Standard practice.
But also, he goes to the marketplace, the agora, daily. And he talks with whoever happens to be there.
Engaging with the everyday life of the city.
Absolutely. And it's there he encounters some of the local intellectuals.
The famous philosophers.
Yeah, specifically some Epicurean and Stoic philosophers start debating with him.
Two very different schools of thought, right?
Very different. The Epicureans generally focused on pleasure, perhaps refined pleasure, but pleasure nonetheless as the main goal of life.
Sort of avoiding pain, maximizing enjoyment.
In a nutshell, yes. And the Stoics.
More about virtue, reason, living in accordance with nature, duty, self-control. Maybe indifference to external circumstances like pleasure or pain.
Right. So you have these established philosophies, and then Paul comes along talking about Jesus and, crucially, the resurrection.
Which probably sounded pretty bizarre to them.
Exactly. Their reactions were, well, varied. Some just dismissed him outright, calling him a babbler.
Like he's just picking up scraps of ideas and spouting nonsense.
Pretty much. Others were a bit more curious, perhaps thinking he was introducing new foreign deities, propagandists for foreign gods, they said, because he spoke of Jesus and the Anastasis, the resurrection.
Anastasis sounds like a goddess name, maybe.
Possibly how they interpreted it initially, yeah. But this talk was strange enough, new enough.
But they wanted a more formal hearing.
Precisely. They take him to a meeting of the Areopagus, the High Council of Athens.
The Areopagus, Mars Hill. This is a big deal.
Oh, yeah. This was a venerable institution, dealt with serious matters, often religious or moral, and Athenians were known for loving anything new, any new idea to discuss.
So Paul gets his platform. How does he approach this, arguably his most intellectual audience yet?
It's masterful, really. He doesn't start by attacking their beliefs. He starts with an observation. He says, "Men of Athens, I see that in every way you are very religious."
Finding common ground. Acknowledging their religiosity.
Exactly. And then he points to something specific he saw. An altar with the inscription, "To an unknown God."
Covering all the bases, just in case they missed one.
Perhaps, but Paul uses it brilliantly. He says, "So you are ignorant of the very thing you worship, and this is what I'm going to proclaim to you."
Wow. Okay, let me introduce you to this God you already sense but don't know.
Perfect summary. And then he lays it out. This God, he's the creator, made the world, everything in it. He's Lord of heaven and earth.
And importantly,
He doesn't live in temples built by human hands. A direct challenge to all those idols he saw.
he doesn't need anything from us.
Right. He's not served by human hands as if he needed anything. He's the one who gives everyone life and breath and everything else.
He flips the script. We depend on God, not the other way around.
Exactly. Then he talks about humanity's origins. From one man, God made all nations.
Setting their appointed times, their boundaries.
All with a purpose, so that people would seek him, perhaps reach out and find him.
Even though he's not far away.
That's the beautiful paradox. He is not far from any one of us. Paul even says, "For in him we live and move and have our being."
Powerful words. And didn't he quote their own writers?
He did. He says, "As some of your own poets have said, we are his offspring."
Using their own culture to connect. Brilliant.
And he uses that point to reason further. If we are God's offspring, made in his likeness in some sense.
Then surely God himself can't be like an image made of gold or silver or stone shaped by human design.
Precisely. He's dismantling the basis for idolatry, using logic they might respect.
So after laying this foundation, where does he go?
To the call for a response, he says, in the past God overlooked such ignorance.
But now?
But now he commands all people everywhere to repent, to turn away from these misconceptions and turn towards him.
And there's a reason for this urgency.
Yes. Because God has set a day when he will judge the world with justice.
Judgment. That's a serious note. Through whom?
Through the man he's appointed. And the proof of this appointment.
The resurrection.
God has given proof of this to everyone by raising him, Jesus, from the dead.
And that's the point where the reactions really diverge, isn't it?
Absolutely. The moment he mentions the resurrection of the dead, the mood shifts.
How so?
Some of them sneered, scoffed. The idea was just ludicrous to them, likely violating their philosophical ideas about the body and soul.
Right, particularly for Greeks, who often saw the body as a prison for the soul. Resurrection wouldn't necessarily sound like good news.
Exactly. But others...
Others were intrigued.
Yeah, they said, we want to hear you again on this subject. So not outright rejection, but maybe cautious interest.
And with that mixed response, Paul leaves the meeting.
He does. It wasn't a mass conversion like in some other places.
But it wasn't a total failure either.
Not at all. The account specifically mentions that some people did join him and believe.
Including someone significant.
Yes, Dionysius, who was actually a member of the Areopagus Council itself.
Wow, so one of the council members believed.
And also a woman named Damaris, and a number of others are mentioned too. So seeds were definitely sown even in the heart of Athenian intellectualism.
It's quite the story. From a jail cell, through riots and debates, to addressing the High Council in Athens, Paul's adaptability is incredible.
Then his consistency.
Right.
The core message about Jesus' suffering, death, resurrection, it remains the same, even if the delivery adapts to the audience.
Okay, this seems like a natural point to just pause the narrative for a moment.
Sure.
Because as we talk about Paul building communities and connecting with people, we want to mention something important to us here at the Olive Grove Podcast.
Mm-hmm.
We really believe in the power of community, and we want to invite you, our listeners, to connect with us and each other through the My Christian Space community. It's an online space designed for encouragement and fellowship.
And building on that idea of community and practical care, we also want to shine a light on Enduring Freedom Ministries.
Yes, tell us a bit about their work.
Well, their mission is really hands-on. They aim to provide really essential support for individuals who are going through tough times. We're talking about things like a hot meal, maybe some groceries to take away.
Basic necessities.
Exactly. Clothing, even a haircut, access to laundry services, things that offer dignity and meet immediate practical needs.
That kind of support can make a huge difference. And if you're listening and thinking you'd like to help make that happen,
there's a really simple way to get involved.
We're inviting you to consider supporting Enduring Freedom Ministries with just $4 a month.
Just $4. And that amount can provide those essential services, the meal, the groceries, the clothing, haircut, laundry for one person.
It's a small amount that has a really tangible impact on someone's life. You can find out more about how to donate on the My Christian Space website.
It connects nicely, actually, with the spirit we see in Acts, a message of faith combined with practical care for one another.
It really does. Okay, so returning to Paul in Athens and wrapping up our look at Acts 17, what are the big takeaways?
Well, as we said, Paul's consistency in his message about Christ is key, but also his incredible adaptability. Synagogue, marketplace, Areopagus, different audiences, different approaches, same core truth.
And the responses were always varied, weren't they?
Right.
Belief, rejection, curiosity, anger.
Yeah, it shows that the gospel message, then as now, doesn't always get an easy reception. It challenges people.
So maybe a thought to leave everyone with. Paul was navigating these really diverse worldviews, finding ways to connect without compromising.
Mm-hmm.
How does his approach speak to us today?
That's the question, isn't it? In our own world, full of different beliefs, and let's be honest, a lot of division. How do we learn from Paul? How do we share what we believe faithfully, but also respectfully and effectively engage with people who see the world very differently?
That's definitely something worth thinking about, a real challenge for us.
Mm-hmm.
To keep exploring insights like these, we really hope you'll subscribe to the Olive Grove Podcast on YouTube. We do these deep dives regularly.
And for early access to future content, and also for the details about My Christian Space and supporting Enduring Freedom Ministries.
Please do visit the My Christian Space website. All the information is there.
You know, this chapter, Acts 17, it just reminds us that spreading faith, spreading important ideas, it always involves both bold proclamation and really thoughtful, nuanced engagement with the culture around you.
Well said. And that wraps up our deep dive for today. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey through Acts chapter 17.
We hope it's given you some fresh perspective on this incredible part of the story.
And maybe some things to ponder in your own life. Thanks for listening.